Hello and welcome to Credit Versio's Q&A Wednesday live for August 4th. I'm your host, David Michalek. I'm a consumer credit expert with almost 9 years experience focused entirely on credit repair and credit education. In that time, I've conducted over 10,000 one-on-one credit consultations, which has resulted in over 1 million disputes and tens of thousands of inaccurate accounts being deleted from credit reports. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you what I've learned over the years on our weekly live Q&A sessions. We do this every Wednesday on both our Facebook and YouTube channels. So please take a second, introduce yourself, let me know where you're from, and if this is your first time joining me, thank you so much for being here. Welcome, and we're going to have a really cool live today. What I do every week is go over some of the questions that I get on Facebook. We have literally hundreds and hundreds of posts on Facebook and to a smaller degree YouTube. And what I do is I take some of the most common questions that I get, the ones that people really want to know about, and I answer those. I do that most of the time. Sometimes I just get some really interesting questions that are very poignant and useful, and I want to cover those as well. So you always hear me start off this session with the same thing. It's a very critical comment. It's a very important thing to understand, and that is our credit report and scores play an enormous role in so many areas of our life. Our insurance company, landlord, mortgage broker, banks, and even our employers are looking at our credit report to see how we honor our obligations. So having great credit is mandatory because credit reports are no longer just credit reports anymore. They have become our adult report cards. They tell the story of what we do when we are entrusted with credit. And that's why we do these live Q&A sessions. So today, as I said, I'm going to go over some of the most popular questions of the week, some of the most interesting questions of the week. But you don't need to stand on ceremony. If you have a question about the software, about disputes, about credit, feel free to ask away. I'm here on your time, and for this 45 minutes or so that we're going to go live, I'm here to answer your questions and give you whatever help I can possibly give you. Okay, so thank you so much for being here. I see we got a handful of people watching. David, thanks for raising your hand there. Introduce yourself, please, if you're watching. I appreciate it. And I'm going to start off with a couple of questions that I got this week. And by the way, I'm posting these questions. I actually rewrote them and did a screenshot. I didn't want to post them with the person's name and everything on it. That's really not what I was interested in doing. It's more of the spirit of the question and what they wanted to know that, or their comment that's really of importance here. So let's put the first one on. All right, hold on one second here. Where is, there it is. Okay, first question. Actually, this was a post. Let's do a little true or false here. And listen, don't be embarrassed if you don't know. That's perfectly fine, but just your best guess. True or false? It's illegal for a collection company to sell your account to another collection company. So this was a post from somebody on Facebook the other day, and boy, were they adamant. Now, I've really condensed this down to just its essence. But really what this woman was saying is it was kind of a long rant of, hey, they can't do that. It's illegal. It's unfair. I read it here and here. Of course, I didn't even bother to cross-reference anything that she referenced because I already know the answer to the question or the answer to the post. So anyway, let's see what we got here. Is it true? Raphael says no. Mary says false. Anybody else want to weigh in? All right, we'll give one more second here. Okay, very good. So is it illegal? No, it's not. A collection is really an asset. It's a dollar amount owed. There is a promissory note that you, me, somebody who went into collections signed at some point with an original creditor. Doesn't matter what it was. It could have been a rental, a lease. It could have been a credit card. It could have been a car loan. And if it goes into default, we will always owe that money. Now, yes, there's something called a statute of limitations, and it's different for every state. Some states give a creditor 2 or 3 years to sue the individual for restitution to regain that amount of money. There's a couple of states that I don't think it ever runs out. They can sue you, I guess, for the rest of your life. But you will always owe the debt until it's paid. Now, as far as credit reporting goes, It's only going to stay on a credit report for 7 years. That's 7 years, and that time starts at what's called the DOFD. That's, if you remember what that one is from last lives, and then tons of credit to you. But that is the date of first default or first delinquency, either or. People call it by both, and that's that 30-day late payment that went to 60, then to 90, then to 120, and maybe went to 150. So when it goes into default and then time goes by, that 7 years started at that 30 days. Okay, and there's another question that was asked that has a lot to do with that in just a second here that I'm going to get to. Okay, so the answer is no, it's not illegal. That is an asset. And if I'm a credit repair company, and let's say, if I'm a collection company and I buy that debt for pennies on the dollar, say from Chase as an example, so that is an asset that I now paid Chase for. I own it. Now, even though, let's say it's a $500 collection, I might have paid Chase maybe $50 for it, maybe $80, who knows? At that point, they don't think they're ever going to see any money for it, so they're going to sell it to a third-party collection company. So even though I bought it at pennies on the dollar, that is an asset for me, and I can collect on it. Now, let's just say I give it a try for a month or two. It's a relatively fresh debt. I'm like, you know what? I'm not really having any success with this. Maybe XYZ collection company, who's a little bit better equipped with this kind of a client or with this kind of a debt, maybe they'd like to take a stab at it. So, okay, I bought it for, what did I say, $50? Okay, let's say I bought it for $50. I'm not having any success. That $500 asset, I can now go over to XYZ collection company and say, hey, listen, I've had it for 2 or 3 months, had no success. Will you give me $20 for it or $25 for it? Okay, they'll pay it. Now they're paying really, really pennies on the dollar. Okay, so yes, they can do that. Now, I'm going to spin off a little bit and go a little bit deeper on this. So is that something that's going to happen a lot? Is a collection company going to sell to another company and another company and another company? Well, the answer to that question is really to a degree. What you're going to see is your A and B tier collection companies. And I'm sure, I'm not sure, but you might have heard of them before, like LVNV, Midland Funding, Enhanced Recovery. I mean, Pinnacle. There's a handful out there that are kind of the A grade third-party collection companies, and they buy debt usually on spreadsheets. Now, if they're not having any success, they hold on to it maybe a few months or so, and if they want to sell it, they're going to sell it to some C and D grade collection company where, as I said a second ago, they're going to sell it for a massive discount because they bought it at a massive discount, and maybe it'll get sold one more time, maybe 2 more times at the most. But the reason why I'm mentioning that is I don't want you to think that if you have a collection that you disputed and deleted, or that it showed up and disappeared, that it's going to continue to get sold over and over and over. It doesn't really work that way because there's only so many debt buyers out there that are willing to try to chase down somebody for an extended period of time. As a general rule, a lot of companies, a lot of collection companies, and this is just from people that I know that are in the business. Like I said, I've been doing this for almost 9 years now. So when you're at it that long, you get to meet a lot of people that are in this business and peripheral businesses. And one of the things that they said is like, yeah, after it gets sold twice, pretty much nobody wants that debt anymore. So why would if I'm a collection company, why would I want to buy a debt that 2 other collection companies couldn't collect on? So anyway, all right, so let's move on to the next question. Any questions on that at all about collections? Feel free to post, and I'll be happy to answer those for you. Okay, next question is, I paid a charge-off credit card account with Chase. Chase is going to be the go-to example today, apparently. But 3 months later, it's still on my credit report. When will it be removed? I got this, oh my gosh, probably 5-6 times in just a period of a couple of days. So just so you understand, like I said in my intro, a credit report is a history. It tells a story of what you and I have done over a period of years, sometimes 10 years, sometimes 20 years. And what a creditor wants to know is, what have you done in the past? Now, if you have an account that went into default, that became a charge-off, it's a great thing to pay it. It's a great thing to honor the debt. But paying the debt does not remove it from the credit report. That's your history. That's my history. That's if you have that kind of a derogatory event, it's perfectly reasonable for a creditor to want to know that happened. Case in point, this is a great conversation I had with one of the guys that I bring on. His name is John Alzheimer. I'm going to reference him in a minute because he wrote an article. I want to read a passage out of it in a second that I think is going to be very, very important to understand. And one of the things that I asked him, just to verify, even though I really knew the answer to this, I just wanted to make sure, is there a difference between a bankruptcy that is discharged versus a bankruptcy that is dismissed on your credit report? The question is, does one do more damage to the other as far as your FICO score and your Vantage score goes? Now, a dismissed bankruptcy is if you started the filing process, but you didn't go through with it. You never filed bankruptcy. We see that all the time, dismissed bankruptcies. A discharged bankruptcy, usually you'll see that almost exclusively with a Chapter 7. That's when you wipe out the debt, it's been discharged, and you move on with your life. So the answer to the question was no. A dismissed bankruptcy, one that you didn't follow through with, does the same amount of damage as a discharged bankruptcy, which is a bankruptcy that was followed through with. And the reason why is it's the intent. Creditors want to know that at some point an individual got to a place where they're like, I got to file bankruptcy. I got in over my head. Maybe there's medical, maybe there's a job loss, maybe it's the economy. It doesn't matter. There's as many reasons why people file bankruptcy as there are people who file bankruptcy probably. But the important part is that all that the scoring models, all that FICO and Vantage care about is what was the intent. So that's why a discharge and a dismissed bankruptcy have the same amount of problematic effect on a credit report and a score. Same thing with a charged off credit card. It doesn't matter that you paid it. Even if you came back around and did the right thing, still it's the intent, it's what happened. Now, having said that, does that mean you can't get it deleted with a dispute? Of course not. You can file a dispute. If you're using Credit Versio, one of the first things that Credit Versio is going to do when it imports your credit report is it's going to look for errors. The AI is reading that charge off and it's going to say, is there anything on here that's an error? It's going to compare that charge off across all three bureaus to see if there's any discrepancies that might make for a good dispute. And even if it doesn't find any errors, statistically, it's going to know what, or working off of probabilities, it's going to know what is the most successful type of dispute to do for that kind of an account. So anyway, that's two different sides of the coin there, that it's not going to come off by itself just because you paid it. The answer to her question is, when will it be removed? It's going to be removed 7 years from, you heard me say it a second ago, the DOFD, the date of first default. So whenever that first 30 days was, that led to the 60, 91, blah, 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 you know where I'm going with this, until it been charged off, that 7 years starts at that 30 day. Okay, next question. Anybody have any questions on that? I know I'm going a little fast here. Okay, and this was another one I got. The reason why I wanted to bring this up, even though it's sensationally rare for anyone using Credit Versio to get a response as marked as frivolous, I want to explain the circumstances under which this does happen. So what is that? First of all, what does a frivolous dispute mean? Well, it means that there are no grounds for the dispute. You can get this if you send in a dispute and say, hey, I really don't like this on my credit report. Well, okay, that's not a reason to remove it. That's not really a dispute. Sometimes people write disputes and they go off on some rant like, I don't think this is fair, so on and so forth, but they don't really go anywhere with it. I've seen people write disputes like that before. So that might be responded to by the bureaus as a frivolous dispute. It doesn't make any sense. But mostly the reason why people get a frivolous dispute in the mail, and the bureaus, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, will send that to you. It'll be a piece of paper and it'll say we've done an investigation, or we've taken in your dispute, we've determined it to be frivolous. Typically what that means is that this account has been disputed many, many times and no new information has been provided. So what happens is, and with this particular person, and I'm really boiling down his comment into just this one sentence, because there was a bigger story behind it. Well, the story was, and I didn't get to the facts until I went back and forth with him over our Facebook Messenger, Why was he getting this? Why? And it said that they were not going to conduct any more or any further investigations until he supplied new information. Well, what had happened was he had disputed this online many times and then hired a credit repair company, which just did some generic disputes. And then a couple of months later, does credit Versio. Well, there's nothing magical about disputes. The dispute language there's no like secret words you can say, like, you know, some abracadabra kind of strategy that's going to make something get disputed. It doesn't work like that. The process of a dispute is opening up an investigation, and if you have something meaningful to challenge the bureau with and the creditor with, they will respond to it. So what had happened in this case is he had disputed this account so many times without saying anything new that the bureaus finally came back and say, "Hey, dude, listen, okay, we got it. You're disputing this account, but you're not telling us why. There's no reason that you're giving us, and the reasons that you have given us in the past, we already answered them, and the account has been verified to be reporting accurately." So typically, you get a frivolous dispute when you've disputed an account multiple times and it's reporting accurately. You know, one of the misconceptions that people have with credit repair is even though you can have a very high probability of success, as a general rule, and don't hold me to this, this is just what I've seen doing credit repair for literally tens of thousands, probably closer to 100,000 people now, is that a well-written dispute strategy, a round one, round two, round three, maybe you go to round four, typically you'll see on the low end, and again, it depends, everybody's different, but if we look at the rule of large numbers, a lot of time you'll see 20-25% of the accounts get deleted on the low end. 50, 55, maybe I've seen deletion averages go up to about 65-70%, but it depends on what you're disputing. So the point is, a good solid dispute strategy over a few months should yield something, simply because creditors have a very hard time responding to disputes. They have a very difficult time, a lot of the time, responding to or conducting the investigation and replying to a good solid dispute. 4 reasons why accounts get deleted under the Fair Credit Reporting Act: erroneous, outdated, incomplete, unverifiable. Okay, the unverifiable is the big one. Okay, erroneous meaning maybe it doesn't belong to you. Incomplete, maybe there's data missing and the creditor does not know how to furnish it. Outdated, that doesn't happen very often. That was written, the outdated part and the rest of the other reasons were written in the 70s. You don't see a lot of things remaining on credit reports longer than they should, mostly because of the new Metro 2 language. So when accounts are supposed to fall off is actually hard-coded. That DOFD that I talked about earlier, that's hard-coded into the programming. Now, even though you and I can't see that on a credit report or our credit disclosure, which is what we see, it's there, and you can't change that. Okay, a good chunk of people watching. Feel free to ask questions if you've got them along the way. Happy to answer them for you. Okay, so frivolous dispute, chances are you're not going to see one. Another reason why people get a frivolous dispute is because it's coming from a credit repair company. There's something in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. We refer to it as Exception G. And essentially what that means is, in the Fair Credit Reporting Act, they spend pages talking about what is the duty, what is the performance that a credit bureau has to conduct when they receive a dispute. What does that burden look like? And it outlines it beautifully. Everything that a bureau needs to do, everything that a creditor needs to do. Then after they get done explaining all that, towards the bottom, there's what's called Exception G, which essentially says, oh, by the way, everything that we just talked about, you can throw that out the window if the dispute comes from a credit repair company. So they're under no obligation to do a reasonable or conduct what's called a reasonable investigation if the dispute comes from a credit repair company, and they always know. Listen, I've had Steve Rieger on this show. Steve used to run the entire dispute division for TransUnion. He was there for 25 years. John Olsheimer, who is a regular, as you might know if you've been on this live before, he used to work in dispute resolution for Equifax. And one of the things they both have said is we always know when the disputes are coming from credit repair companies. They're not fooling anybody. Now, when you send a dispute with Credit Versio, it's not a credit repair company. We are not a credit repair company. the software is guiding you through the process. It's building the letter for you. It's all in a format that complies with the law. It's a format that we know the bureaus like because we know people that work in the bureaus. And it's coming from you. You print it, you send it, it's got your postmark on it, and they completely understand it's coming from you. It's not coming into the bureaus in a huge box, a huge mailbox with 5,000 other letters that came from the credit repair company. Okay, let's move on. That's Frivolous. This one, I get this on a daily basis. And probably so does the customer support team in here as well. Is a bankruptcy difficult to remove from a credit report? Well, the question really isn't is it difficult or easy? When it comes to something being removed from a credit report, the question is the account reporting accurately or is it not? Can the data furnisher / creditor or the bureau, can they verify the information or can they not? So that's really when we're talking about the repair and the dispute process, really it all hinges on that. Is it reporting accurately? So do bankruptcies come off frequently with a dispute? If they're not yours, if there's something wrong with the bankruptcy, if there's something grossly inaccurate about the bankruptcy, then they come off. Well, what about if it truly is yours? It's a little bit different when we're talking about a public record, because bankruptcies are not things that are necessarily furnished to a credit bureau, meaning it's not like Chase or Discover or Ford or Wells Fargo that furnishes data. A public record like a bankruptcy is something that the bureau goes out and gets themselves. So they'll go to LexisNexis, SageStream. Those are the information suppliers. So when that information is provided to them, you have to have a really good cause as to why that bankruptcy is not reporting accurately. But if I were to answer this question, if I were really pressed, is a bankruptcy difficult to remove from a credit report? It happens rarely. Getting it deleted from 1 or 2 happens pretty routinely. Getting it deleted from all 3 in the tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 clients that I've helped service over the last 9 years or so, I've seen it very rarely. Okay, Lisa Lee. I'm going to pause right here. I want to get to Lisa's question, but I want to wrap up this bankruptcy with one other comment on it. Okay. Lisa, you mentioned DOFD. I have something on my credit where the creditor claimed I paid $1. Okay. When they did that, it reset the 7 years. I never paid the $1 and they refused to provide the information on how it appeared. Is that legal? Okay, Lisa, a couple things. No, it's not. However, that is usually something that, first of all, if that's the case, then I want you to email me or reach out via Messenger, and I'm going to give you the name of an attorney that you might want to talk to. Most of the time when you hear that, it is complete nonsense because the DOFD is hard coded into the account. So Lisa, if you were to look at that collection, you're going to see an open date. Okay, now that open date isn't when the account was originally opened by the creditor. That's just the date that collection company got that debt. But when they received that debt, in the coding, and again, you and I, we don't see, the public doesn't really see a full credit report. We see what's called a credit disclosure. It's an abbreviated stack of information about an account, just enough so we can understand what the account's about, like the name of the creditor, account number, balances, some miscellaneous data. But along with that data, there's a whole huge amount of coding that goes with that. That's a Metro 2 language. Can they pay $1 and re-age it? At their peril. So if you believe that's the case, email me or go through Messenger. So the email is davidm at, let me just put it in the, hold on, let me just make it easy on you. Okay, there you go. I just popped my email. You'll see it there. Let me know if you don't. And there we go. Yep, I see it in YouTube. I think that's where you're coming from. Okay. Oh no, maybe not. It's showing on YouTube and, well, let me know if you can't see it. Let me know, and then I'll find another way of getting it over to you. But chances are that's not really what happened, even if they said that. If it is, then definitely you want to reach out to an attorney. Okay. Wrapping up with this bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is one of those things that is not difficult to recover from. In fact, it is easier to recover and build up great credit with a bankruptcy than it is to try to repair credit and just wait it out. I've seen so many credit reports with a bankruptcy that's 2, 3 years old, 4 years old, where their credit scores were in the high 700s. Sometimes when you file bankruptcy, you'll watch your score shoot up because you've wiped out your debt. So there's really nothing more to keep the credit score down as far as debt goes. So you might see a temporary increase, but it's really easy to rebuild credit after filing bankruptcy. So even though people completely obsessed, I'll get rid of this here. Even though people really obsess with bankruptcy, it's not the nail in the coffin that most people think it is. It's not all that difficult to recover from. Okay. Next one. What's the best credit card utilization to have for the highest credit score? I think the general knowledge is that 1% is like that magic utilization rate. But here's why 99% of the population doesn't need to worry, or maybe not 99%, but I would say maybe 90% of the population doesn't really need to worry about trying to get lucky and get that 1% credit utilization. The best utilization is 0%. Pay off those cards. Don't carry a balance. The great thing about credit cards, it's the only kind of loan that is interest optional. What I mean by that is as long as you pay off that amount, as long as you pay off your credit card in full, you're not going to pay any interest. You don't really want to keep a balance on a credit card. Now, granted, I know things are weird right now. I know that's easier said than done. But ideally, you don't want to carry a balance on a credit card. So when people ask me, what's the best utilization rate? Best utilization rate is 0. Pay off the credit card. You don't need to keep a balance on your card for it to help your score. This is one of the countless myths that exist in the whole credit repair, build my credit blogosphere, is that, well, you got to keep less than 20% or 10%, or you've got to show a little something on your card. You got to carry a little bit of a balance. No, you don't. You don't have to carry a little bit of balance at all. You can have 0 balances all across your accounts on your credit report, and that looks fantastic. Think about it for a second. If you're a lender, if you're a bank, and you've got an applicant, and you look at their credit report, and the credit scores are really good, and you see that on all the credit card, they have $20, $30, $40, $50,000 worth of available credit, and you see 0 balances across the board. What does that tell you about that person? It tells you that they really know how to manage their money. They know how to manage their credit. They're not living beyond their means. They're not prone to getting into a situation where they might owe a lot of money on a sensationally high interest type of loan, which is a credit card. It's the worst kind of money to borrow. That and maybe a loan shark. I mean, we're here in Las Vegas after all. But apart from that, having 19, 20% interest rate, 25% interest rate on the money that you charge, or the amount that you charge for that Starbucks, or that sheet set at Bed Bath & Beyond, or whatever it is, that's not interest that you want to pay. That's not a balance that you want to keep. So that is far more important than the extra handful of points that you might get if you have a 1% or 2% credit utilization rate. Don't chase the points. Show that you are really good managing credit. Okay, let's get perfect timing. I got Ronan here. Ronan or Ronin? Remember that movie Ronin? That's an awesome name. If your name is Ronan, dude, that is awesome. That was one of my favorite movies. Anybody see that movie with, was it Al Pacino was in that? Okay, I have the same problem. Credit card from Bank of America. Showing my credit report is closed in 2014, and they always, let me put it back on there again. It timed out. And they always update that, and it still shows on my credit report since 2014. Okay, so Ronan, they're not updating the information. If it's a closed account, what I mean by that is they're not refreshing the date. If they do anything at all, if it's a closed account, all that they're doing, when Bank of America sends over their massive, we still call it tape, but really what they're doing is they're sending over all the updates for however tens of millions of clients that they have. And when your account is in that, all that they're doing is saying, hey, nothing's changed. We're updating this account, nothing's changed. It doesn't mean that it's staying on longer. One of the things that you want to look at, Ronan, is this. It says it's closed. Hold on, same problem. Credit card, Bank of America, showing credit report. Okay, closed in 2014. Okay. Was it a charge-off? If it was a charge-off, then it's 7 years from the date of first delinquency, date of first default. Now, what happens a lot of times is people get that date a little bit confused, and I'll tell you what happens a lot of the time. So, and this may be the case with you, Ronan, maybe not. But people have a 30-day, then a 60-day late, and then they're back on time again. And then they pay on time for a while, and then there's another 30-day, then a 60-day, and then they get back on time for a while. What happens is people think that 7 years should have started way back here with that first 30-day, but the thing they forget is they got caught up over here. They had a 30-day, a 60-day, then they got caught up, and then a 30, maybe another 30-day, and then they got caught up. So it's the last 30-day, the most recent 30-day that led to total default. So if you got 30 days and then you're getting caught up, and then here's where your 30-day late was that led to default, meaning 30, 60, 90, 120, and then charge off, that's where that DOFD is. That's where that 7 years is, not from this 30-day that you might have had way back over here, but then got caught up. So make sure that you have that clear, because every time I get a post like this or get a question like this, when I start drilling that down, I would say about 75% of the time that's actually the issue right there, is they didn't quite understand when the DOFD was. Now 2014, closed 2014, we're talking 7 years. So that should be coming off really soon, provided that that's when the charge off was. Now if the account was closed in 2014 but didn't charge off until later on, okay, then we're not quite at 7 years yet. Here's what you can do. Go to any credit bureau where this is on, and just order a credit report from them. Not an online credit report, but have them mail one to you. Order it online, okay, or call them, whatever you want to do. What'll happen is when you get a full credit report from the bureaus, remember I told you earlier that the DOFD, that date of first default, is hardwired into the Metro 2. Because they do that, on that account, on that Bank of America account, if you look all the way to the right, it'll say, this is on the credit report, a paper credit report. Now, you're not going to see that from Smart Credit or Identity IQ. You're not going to see this from an online report that you get that's in PDF format. This has to be a paper credit report directly from the bureau. Now, when you open that up, it'll say, this account is due to report until, and it'll tell you the date that that's going to come off. Now, if you think that's wrong, Ronan, email me and I'll be more than happy to take a look at it for you. But typically that's usually the case. Okay, great question. Thank you so much. All right, let's move on to, I answered the best utilization rate. And this is a big one. Now, this one is really important, and it ties directly into what we're talking about today. So this was a post, and this was a rant. It wasn't just a post, it was a rant. And what this person was saying is, hey, listen, if you pick up the phone and you call a collection company, even if you call them, that's verifying the debt, and that resets the 7 years. In fact, if you even do a dispute, well, let me just read it. It says, if you talk to a collection company, you're verifying the debt, and the 7-year countdown starts all over again. The same goes with any disputing any account. I can't tell you how many times in the last 9 years that this comes up, and people get very, very passionate about it. And I've had conversations with people where I'm like, listen, I've been doing this for years. I've gotten great training, great mentors. I'm a certified FICO Pro, I'm a credit instructor, and people will want to argue this with me when I tell them that this is complete nonsense. As I've said a couple times in this video, that date of first default is hard-coded. You can't change it. But if you don't want to believe me, this is where I'm going to read you off a quote. Now, I'm going to post a link to this article right here. You should be able to see it now. And you can follow along with me if you want, but if you just want to just watch, I'm going to read it to you. So this is a quote. The title of the article is Re-Aging Common on Credit Reports? Now, this is written by John Alzheimer. Now, if you don't know who John Alzheimer is, if you haven't been to any lives in the past, John is essentially, he's regarded as the #1 credit expert in the country. He's the guy that was he worked for FICO, and he was the guy that was part of the integration of FICO scores into the credit bureaus in the late 90s. Then he went on to work for Equifax. And this guy is the ultimate authority. He knows how everything about FICO, Metro 2, VantageScore, this is what he does. So let me quote a paragraph here. It's about halfway down the article. It says, can you accidentally re-age your account? Okay, I'm going to read this to you. As with all things credit, I'm quoting him here, there are myths floating around that around the subject of re-aging negative credit information. For example, some would have you believe that simply paying a collection or some other negative entry will re-age the account. This is incorrect. Okay, you can pay an account, dispute an account, argue about an account, settle an account, or anything else you can think of. Nothing, and I mean nothing, you do can cause a negative account to stay on your credit report for longer than 7 years. Okay, this is coming from the guy who helped build the FICO scoring models into the credit bureaus. Okay, definitely definitive. So no, feel free if you want to negotiate with a collection company, with an original creditor. If you want to send a dispute, nothing is going to reset that 7-year timeline. I hope that we're all satisfied with that answer now. Okay, Ronan, check your email. I will. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I'll get back to you as soon as I read it. Usually it's within 24 hours or so. Okay. Now, that's pretty much, I went through this a lot faster than I thought I would, but here again, we're at 40 minutes. So every time I do one of these, it flies by, and we're almost at that 45-minute mark. Does anybody have any questions? First of all, how many people here are using Credit Versio? Just do like a little like or just a yes or something like that. Let me know so I can maybe address anything specific about Credit Versio if you like. One of the most important things that I can tell you about Credit Versio, one of the things I love about this software and the reason why I'm with Credit Versio and why I've been here since the very beginning, the dispute process is almost always multi-letter. It is. I had somebody post the other day and saying, this is crazy. Why do I have to send multiple letters out? I should just be done with one letter. Yeah, that would be great. That would really be great if that was the case. But that's not the case. It's not the way that it works. And the reason for that is when you send a dispute, ideally paper, you want to stick with paper. But even if you did one online, one of the default reactions that the data furnisher has when they receive a dispute is to quickly reply saying that everything is in compliance with the law, that everything is reporting accurately. In fact, that's what you'll see usually when you get that first response from the bureau. It'll say, we've conducted the investigation. Your creditor has said that everything is reporting accurately. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that they perform what's called a reasonable dispute? Okay, that's the language of the law under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. They have to perform a reasonable investigation. I think I said reasonable dispute. I meant reasonable investigation. Most of the time, they don't do that. Why do they not do that? Because they know that 80% of the people are going to go away after the first dispute. They're going to look at it and say, well, that didn't work. Oh, let me get rid of this. Get rid of that. Okay. And then they move on. They don't do a second dispute. So we had a saying in the credit repair business when I used to work for one of the largest ones in the country, that the repair process really started at the second dispute, because you can almost assume that the first dispute is probably not going to yield a whole lot. If you got some low-hanging fruit like some paid collections, some old collections, and yeah, that stuff might drop off on the first dispute. But it's that second follow-up, that bam, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I disagree with the outcome of what you said. Please explain to me how you were able to verify this information is reporting accurately. Then the creditor's like, oh, shoot, this person's not going away. Okay, they fall into that 20% that are going to grind this out, and we have to respond. And that's really where the race begins. Okay. Angel, love it. Just about to send out round 2. Great. That's where it begins. Good job, Angel. Way to stay the course. And that was really my whole point in bringing that up is this is a multi-step process, a multi-letter process. That's what Credit Versio was engineered to do. When it brings in a second credit report, it knows what happened on the first credit report. It's reading it. It's comparing them side by side, just like an expert would. Just like if I were to sit down and take your credit report from this month and your credit report from last month and side by side look at the differences to see what happened and find errors. That's what Credit Versio is doing. The difference is I might make a mistake. If I'm looking at a 20, 30, 40-page credit report, I might miss something. Credit Versio is not going to miss anything, and it does it in about a second. Okay. All right. Sean Fisher. Yes, love Credit Versio. Learned so much from you. About to send my third dispute letter. Awesome job, Sean. That is great. I love seeing that. Okay, Mario, can you point to me to using Credit Versio? I have downloaded it to my phone. I'm currently using Smart Credit paid account, but would like to integrate the report to Credit Versio. Great question, Mario. So Smart Credit's a little bit different than the other credit report that we connect with, which is called Identity IQ. Identity IQ can be pushed over to Credit Versio without a problem. Smart Credit operates a little bit differently. If you have an existing Smart Credit report, when you create a Credit Versio account, it's going to find that account. It's going to say, hey, we found your account under this email address. And if it's compatible, it will link. It'll ask you for your password. If it's not compatible, it's going to prompt you to call Smart Credit. So the way that Smart Credit works, it's a massive company, but what they do really well is they're able to take your credit report and send it in what's called a JSON code. It's a big digital file format, and send that to Credit Versio. So if it's not set up to do that, then you just have to call Smart Credit and say, hey, I've got an account with Credit Versio. Can you make my Smart Credit account compatible? And they will. They just have to point it over to Credit Versio. All you have to do is come back to Credit Versio, put in your username and password, they'll link together. Not a problem. Okay, Angel, question. Is it necessary to wait 40 days or is between 30 and 40 okay? Yeah, Angel, it depends. Let me tell you why real quickly we set it at 40 days. We have to account for the fact that you have to look at what the majority of people do. Okay, there's tens of thousands of people using Credit Versio right now. I think over 110,000 accounts, and I think maybe 40 something, maybe 50,000 people have gone through it. So when we look at large numbers like that, you might have, the day you signed up, you might have created your letters that day and had them out the next day in the mail, which means 5 days later, they're at the credit bureaus. Most people don't do that. Most people sign up like on a Thursday or a Friday, and they're like, oh man, this is awesome. Let me watch the tutorials tonight, and then they do it tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to create my letters Monday. So 3, 4, 5 days goes by, and then they create the letters and drop them in the mail. So Credit Versio has to account for the fact that it takes people usually a few days to just, even though this is simple to do, you could do your dispute letters in 10 minutes if you wanted, even if you had a big account. But that's not what a majority of people do. It takes them a couple of days. So we have to account for that and 2, 3, 4 days for those letters to travel in the mail. And then that's when that 30-day starts. So that's why Credit Versio does the 40-day countdown. Now, if you got your letters done the day of and you got them in the mail the next day, then yeah, just go 35. If you're at the 35-day mark or so and you've gotten responses and you're ready to go, yeah, then if you have Smart Credit, all you do is log into your Smart Credit account, and you can get there from your Credit Versio account. On the home page, scroll down, it says Credit Report Provider. It'll say Smart Credit. Also, you can do this with Identity IQ, and then log into your Smart Credit account or your Identity IQ account and just order a new credit report. They charge you monthly, so you have the ability to get a new credit report monthly if you wanted to. So if you go in at day 35, you can see that you're eligible for new credit report. So once you order it, it'll pop up in Smart Credit, and it'll take about maybe 2 hours or so, maybe 3 hours for Smart Credit to bundle all the brand new credit reports up and then send them over to Credit Versio. So don't be alarmed if it doesn't come over instantaneously. But yeah, Angel, use your best judgment. If you know you're on point, you got everything mailed out real fast, and you're tight to the timeline, yeah, go ahead and update it at 35 days if you want to. Okay, Mario, you are very welcome. And what are we coming to now? We are coming to 46 minutes. One more, please. Okay. AT&T. Okay, I guess, Mario, you are prepping. You're typing your question right now as we speak, I would assume. Okay, so going back to while we're waiting on Mario, if something more is coming, Mario, keep in mind that you want to stay on target. You want to make sure that you're sending out your dispute letters on time. That's why we changed Credit Versio about, gosh, what was it, 4 months ago, maybe 5 months ago. We used to not have a dispute plan on the homepage. And now it has a dispute plan. Like it'll tell you, okay, print your letters by this time, send them out by this date, and this is when your new credit report's coming in. So even though our first iteration of Credit Versio was actually pretty cool, I think, after talking to thousands of people on the phone and getting comments, we're like, okay, we really need to be a lot more specific of what needs to be done and when. Okay, Mario, let's see if you got your question ready for me. If not, that's okay. Let's see. One more, please. AT&T. Okay, I'm not sure if you're got something more to that. All right, we'll give it another second or so, Mario, and if I miss it live, then I routinely comb through these comments because even though we might have 20, 30, 40 people watching the live right now, we'll have 200, 300, 500 people come in after the fact and put in their questions. Okay, there we go. AT&T did a bait and switch on me. Now in collection with credence. What should I do? Okay. So there's a difference between a discussion about the contract that you had with AT&T and what's being reported to the credit bureaus. Really what you ought to do is settle this with AT&T. Well, actually, I take that back. If it's with credence now, I don't know if the debt is assigned to credence or if credence is a third-party collection company that bought the debt. In all cases, I did this talk one time. This is probably about 7 years ago to a big group of mortgage brokers. And one of the things, what that talk was about was how bad the word principal is. And what I mean by that is, I can't tell you how many hundreds of conversations of people that I talked to where they said, well, I didn't pay that because I didn't think it was fair, or I didn't think that's what I owed. I didn't pay it for the principle of it. And what happens is, rather than, okay, maybe it was $100 more or $50 more, rather than just finding some way to settle that, they got upset and they got emotional. And by the way, Mario, I'm not saying that this is what you did. I'm making an illustration here. What they did is they just didn't pay it. They couldn't bring themselves to pay it. And what ended up happening is that $200 or $300 or $400 account now is a collection on their credit report that can cost them thousands and thousands of dollars in interest, in not being able to access credit, in deposits and fees, things that come with not having a good credit score. So Mario, when you're already at the place where it's a collection, if you feel like you've got a winnable fight with AT&T and you've got documentation, you can't just say it was a bait and switch unless you've got the contract in your hand and they did something different. Because what happens a lot of time is people just don't read the fine print. And I'm not saying this is the case with you. I'm just saying that make sure that if you're going to go into a fight with AT&T, be sure that you've got your ducks in a row and that everything's lined up where you can prove it to them. And if that's the case, then you might want to talk to an attorney. But if that's not the case, if there isn't any documentation and it's really just your word against theirs, well, guess who's going to win? It's going to be you against a $1 billion company. And a lot of times, and it doesn't make people happy, and this is where you have to look at the greater good. But sometimes you just got to go, okay, hey, listen, it's $400. Okay, it's not what I thought I owed. Maybe it's not what I owed at all, but man, I got to settle this debt. I got to pay this. If you're talking with credence, see if you can get a pay for delete. See, if they bought this debt from AT&T, meaning, let's just say, I'm making up a number. Let's say you owe them $400 and they bought this debt for $100. Probably a lot less than that, actually. But just go to them and say, hey, listen, I got $200. I got $150, whatever it is. Yeah, so let me put this up here. Yeah, they say they don't have the phone conversation. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. I've said that so many times. In order to get a phone conversation, I mean, you're going to need a subpoena. And you're talking about a big deal to do something like that. So just assume that's not going to happen. So if you want to settle with credence, again, this is one of those greater good moments. Okay, maybe you feel you don't owe the money. Maybe you don't owe the money at all. Are you going to fight it? Are you going to? How long do you want this on your credit report? Maybe you go to credence and say, hey, listen, I owe $400. I got $150 right now. If I pay this to you, Will you delete this from my credit report from all three bureaus? That's the only way it's worth it to me. Otherwise, it's not really worth it. See what they say. So you can get a pay for delete. Now, what if they say no? A lot of collection companies won't do that because actually they're prohibited from doing it. Some will, some won't. But if they won't, pay it anyway. It's good to end that adversarial relationship. It ends the phone calls. It ends, if you're getting them, it ends that relationship. And then swing back around with a dispute. Here's one of the things that happens a lot when you dispute collection accounts. When you dispute a collection, especially from a third-party collection company, there is a process that they have to go through to respond to that dispute. It costs them money. It costs them time and energy. A lot of times when you have a paid collection and you wait 30 days or so, 60 days or so, you swing back around and send a dispute, a lot of times they just delete it. They don't, or they won't even respond, and the bureau will delete it because they don't care. They do not care what's on your credit report. They just care about the money. And if you settle that debt with them, much higher probability of that thing going away when it's paid. Okay. What would I offer for $2,000? This is not really my area of expertise. I don't negotiate stuff like this, but I would say, start low. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. They're collection agents. They get beat up all day long. I don't know, $200, $250. They're not going to want that. But listen, if you're in no rush to get it done, and also another tip, don't make a payment plan with them. Pay in full. Get that paid in full. Seal that deal. Make sure it's done and paid. Maybe you'll settle for half. But for $2,000, I would be surprised if they wouldn't take $500. But who knows what they got into it? Okay, last question from Terrence. I'm new to Credit Versio. Just on my first round, is there a place in the software to remove inquiries, or does that even matter? Actually, Terrence, it's right there. When you create your dispute letters, there's three sections. There's accounts, there's public records, and there's inquiries. So as you're creating your disputes, you just go down there and you want to include your inquiries on your original dispute letter. But listen, don't worry about it. Okay, so here's the thing about in the credit repair and the credit education space, one of the things that is fodder for comedy is inquiries, and the reason for that is, well, I'll show you. Let me put something up on the chart here for you that since we're talking about inquiry. Okay, that's not exactly the way I wanted to do it, but okay, that'll work. Okay, if you see in the upper, I think it's the left-hand corner, you see where it says new credit 10%? It's orange. Okay, that is the section where inquiries sit. Now, does that mean that inquiries are worth 10% of your score? Not at all. That's just the section that it sits in, along with anything that's new. And there's a few things that are involved in that section. I won't go into that. It gets a little detailed. But most of the time, inquiries have a very benign effect on your credit report, even if you have multiple inquiries. So for example, I responded to a guy's comment today on Facebook where he went to a car dealership, and might have been an email, not that it matters. But he went to a car dealership, they ran his credit 7 or 8 places. He's freaking out because now he's got 7 or 8 inquiries. What I told him is, those are all one inquiry. Not only does the inquiries virtually not matter, for a couple of reasons I'll get into. If inquiries come in a bundle, now Terrence, let me know if this is your situation, if you bought something and there are multiple inquiries that all came in a short period of time. If it's Vantage Score, it doesn't matter where the inquiries came from. You could have been shopping for a house, a car, you could have 10 inquiries from a car, you could have a couple inquiries from your bank. As long as they're within 14 days, that's counted as one inquiry. Neither Vantage Score nor FICO cares about inquiries once they're 12 months old. That's if they had any impact on you at all. So this myth that, well, an inquiry is worth 5 points or 4 points, that's complete nonsense. There is no hard and fast rule as to what an inquiry is worth. It is true that sometimes it will have an effect on your credit report. It is not true that it will always have an effect on your credit report. Okay, and if you want to don't do anything now. If you want to dispute those, Terrence, wait for your round 2 and then send off a dispute. If your inquiries are over 12 months, don't waste your time. They're there cosmetically. You can see them on a credit report, but nobody else can. Don't worry about it. Okay. David, you're the man. Thank you. Appreciate that, Mario. And if you guys have any questions, just reach out. Terrence, you are very welcome. Again, don't worry about inquiries. when people are doing credit repair and they've got late payments and collections and things like that, that's stuff that's worth worrying about. An inquiry is like, it's like if your house is on fire and you're trying to, you're trying to go get, your couch out of the house. It's just not worth it. Don't waste your time. I don't know if that was even a good analogy, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Okay, well, we're coming down to the end. We're at 57 minutes. We went a little long today. Thank you so much for the questions. Feel free to, if you think of something else, pop them in this thread. Like I said, I routinely go through these. I get prompts. If somebody asks any questions, I'll swing back around and answer them. And I hope it's been a good live for you. Thank you very much for joining me. And then next week we'll be back on again, same time, same place, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have John Olsheimer next time. So if you got any great questions, save them up, and we'll look forward to answering them. Thanks again for being with me today, and we'll see you.